Christina Shi.
Wow, there's a lot of you. Thank you so much to Andy for inviting me here, even though I challenged him a lot. Although no thank you for making me follow Jay Smooth. Like, Jay-Z never does anything cool when I hang out with him. So like, what am I even supposed to do? So like Andy kind of spoiled, you know, I think I'm very different from a lot of the people who have spoken here. I don't really see myself as a creator. I don't really have a lot of ideas that are bursting to get out of me in some fully formed way. I have almost no inner turmoil, really. Like, I just watch superhero cartoons all day long. But what I am passionate about is creating communities and creating support for creators. I think creators are awesome. I love that they make really cool stuff, and I want to help them do that better. So one of the communities I built, as Andy said, was RaffleCon, which is this absolutely bizarre place where, you know, Hannah Hart from My Drunk Kitchen could be cooking a souffle or whatever with a vegan black metal chef. It was a place to not only celebrate internet culture, but also have really interesting conversations about it and figure out where it's all going and why it got here. Awesome Foundation is another group. It's a international group of guerrilla philanthropists, I like to call it. Basically groups of people all over the world who get together and just give out money to cool stuff in their communities. Awesome stuff, in fact. There's a chapter here in Portland. You should check it out. There's chapters everywhere. And as of yesterday morning, we've given out $670,000 to really cool projects all over the place. But because I'm not a creator, I don't really have like an epic origin story to tell. So I'll tell somebody else's epic origin story instead. This is a guy named James Irwin. He's been a writer for over a decade, mostly writing nonfiction, so encyclopedias, software manuals, things like that. He got his big break, as so many do, by posting a comment on Reddit. Somebody posed this hypothetical question because they were incredibly bored. Could I destroy the entire Roman Empire if I traveled back in time with a modern US Marine infantry? And instead of just engaging in debate, he had literally, because he writes encyclopedias, he had literally encyclopedic knowledge and decided to respond with the beginning of a story that was very compelling. So people loved it immediately, and people were demanding that he write more. He spent the rest of the day writing more and more episodes of the story. By the end of the week, people had created a subreddit, which is a separate community just for this work. They made incredible fan art and fake movie posters and music for this story, which he called Rome, Sweet Rome. And actually within about a week and a half, I think, and this is a very lucky thing, he got a call from Hollywood. They wanted to turn his Reddit comment into a screenplay, which is insane. And to him, that was like, what an amazing opportunity that he was going to get paid a bunch of money, and his story was going to maybe be turned into a movie. So he did it. After careful thought and talking with the community, he decided to do it. And I've talked to him about this, and he says that it was a great decision. Like, what a great opportunity. He couldn't turn it down. But the one bad thing about it, as is such a familiar XOXO story, he lost creative control over the movie. He wrote the first draft of the screenplay, but he doesn't have control over what actually happens. And he also isn't allowed to keep writing his story until the movie comes out, at which point he can write fan fiction. So when he decided to write a new story, Acadia is set in the future. There's crazy stuff going on with AIs and sort of vaguely dystopian, but also hopeful. He wanted to do it by himself. He wanted to go straight to the fans. And a lot of publishers were interested because they know his story. They knew his story already. But he didn't want to give up creative control. He wanted to do it himself. So he really wanted to run a crowdfunding campaign. But he's a recent dad. He has a full-time job. Dude has a lot on his plate, right? And he just really didn't want to do it by himself. So that's where we come in. So the reason why Andy, I think, didn't Breadpig is a really weird thing to describe because I think we only figured out what we were doing about 6 months ago. It was founded in 2008, and at the time it was a collection of random projects. We sort of focused from there into doing merchandising. So we were producing like barbecue sauce and lolcat refrigerator magnets and books. And we decided to make more books, so we became a publisher of sorts. But a very strange one that focused on webcomic artists with really large online audiences. And basically, it was not so different from merchandising for us. We were helping them make a book that's no different from making a stuffed animal or whatever. We didn't see it as a publishing model at all. And now what we do, James coined the term, is Kickstarter midwifery, which I said this phrase to Bennett Foddy yesterday, and he was like, "That's horrifying." And I was like, "No, no, no, we're not crowdfunding the birthing of babies. That's gross. We are helping. We're helping creators get their projects out there. They're doing the bulk of the work, the creative gestation, and we hold their hand and tell them to push, and then we clean up the. This metaphor is going nowhere. So how Breadpig works is we charge an hourly rate, and depending on how involved we get in the project, we also charge a percentage of the take. However, we only charge that if the project is successful. And we only work on the parts of the project that you want us to. So if you come to us and say, "I already know exactly what I want to do, I just need help with fulfillment," we say, "Great." If you say, "I have no idea what I'm doing," we can also help you get to the point of actually doing it. But the point is that you retain all creative control. You also retain all the power in the relationship. At any given point, you can say, "Hey, I know that you think we should do things this way, but I don't want to." And we're like, "Okay, it's a bad idea. Ryan North, don't sign 17,000 books." But you can do that. You can do that if you want. He went through like 12 Sharpies. And we do the same things as a publisher, ultimately. We can do distribution, we can do promotion, we do the production, we do give all the support. The only difference is that we completely invert the power structure. Rather than us being the high and mighty publisher that you have to grovel to and we like maybe look at your manuscript, you are our client and we do whatever you want us to do. So here are some of the projects we've worked on in the past. This is most of our lineup for this year so far. A really big project with Zach Weinersmith, the guy behind Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. This is a collection of science-related comics. Story War, which is here, we helped Brad with the campaign, getting it out there, and I love the game, so I'm really excited about it. And Ryan's project, a choose-your-own-adventure version of Hamlet, very intuitive market, which did amazingly well. But in the beginning, when we started doing this, we thought, where we really excel is helping creators who already have a large fan base deal with their demand, right? Like 17,000 books is no joke to pack and ship to countries all over the world. So we will handle that so you can keep making really cool stuff. We, over the last year, never really approached anybody and said, "Hey, we think you would be a great fit." We more said, "Hey, we do this. If you want help, let us know." So we didn't really target people, and if we did, it was big creators who we thought we could help with fulfillment. But a strange thing started happening, which is that small creators really started becoming interested in our services. And this was really counterintuitive to us. I was like, if you have like 2,000 backers, that's not huge. You can do that yourself. It's time-consuming, but I didn't think it was necessary. So our clients started getting smaller and smaller, which is the opposite of what Drake told us we should be doing. And that was interesting to me because I think it complicates this myth of the DIY independent creator who just needs to like burst free of whatever structure they're in and do it by themselves, right? Because for some people it works. For some people they have that personality. They know exactly what they want to do. But for a lot of other people, independence is lonely and it's terrible to manage yourself. Anybody who works from home knows this, right? You are your own babysitter, and it's awful. And you don't have any friends anymore. And I mean, it's not that extreme, but having camaraderie and support and management, and especially education and guidance along the process, is a really important thing, which is why Wolverine is much more effective as a member of the X-Men than just by himself. But I think what all this got me to was realizing that, we've heard so many amazing trailblazing stories here, but trailblazing shouldn't be necessary, right? Like, not everyone should have some sort of epic origin story to be able to succeed. They shouldn't have to, their parents shouldn't have to be dead for them to become like a successful creator. Because trailblazing is awesome, and I applaud everyone who just jumped off of the beaten path to go do their thing, but it's also expensive. Like, do you know how much Patagonia costs? It's expensive, right? And if you create a system that only rewards people who trailblaze, you're gonna end up with two groups of people who win. One group is exceptionally talented, lucky, hardworking people, many of whom are here, and those people should win and probably will win in most situations, but helping them win is totally awesome. The other group, though, is people who have enough privilege to take risks and to be able to try things. And so I think we can't depend on trailblazing. We can't depend on this idea that everyone needs to go it alone if we want what we have here to go more mainstream, if we want more people to access everything that we've built here. And after all, they don't have to, right? Like, Batman has Alfred. I told you all I do is watch superhero cartoons. There's no reason why the great talented creators who are really good at doing one thing should have to learn how to do accounting, bookkeeping, stuffing envelopes, learning about obscure customs laws. There's no reason for that, right? Like, everyone can have their role in making something great happen, and we've glorified, I think, people doing everything themselves to an extent that is perhaps unhelpful. So I think that as XOXO and this related movement, whatever it is, harnessing the power of independent creators moves forward, what we need to start thinking about is how do we build a really rich and healthy ecosystem of support structures. And the technical platforms that we heard about today and that we all know and love are getting us part of the way there, right? They enable it, and they are building the audience for it, and they're doing a lot. But they can't do everything, and they shouldn't do everything. So not only do we need that, but we need spaces like Periscope, like Erica was telling us about yesterday, spaces that are supportive and offer mentorship and all that stuff. And this quote, I really enjoyed this quote by this feminist, Jo Freeman. She wrote, "If the movement is to grow beyond these elementary stages of development, it will have to disabuse itself of some of its prejudices about organization and structure. There's nothing inherently bad about either of these. They can be and often are misused, but to reject them out of hand because they are misused is to deny ourselves the necessary tools to further development." She was talking about the feminist movement. She was part of the women's liberation movement, and obviously they had problems with structure, but what she found was that if you reject it entirely, you end up with something else that's just as bad. And I'm gonna explain this using platformer screenshots. So this is a screenshot from a game called I Wanna Be the Guy. It's one of the hardest games ever. But you wouldn't know it by looking at this. It looks really idyllic. There's fruit trees and platforms. You get everything you need. Compare it to this screenshot from Super Meat Boy, right? This looks much more grim, but this is much, much easier. Why? Because you can see the things that are trying to kill you. You know which things you have to jump over. You know how to avoid them. You can plan. This, you don't know that the apples will fall and crush you. You don't know that some of them fly upwards. The tyranny of structurelessness is a concept that refers to the fact that the system that you can't see is worse than the system that you can see. And we need to be able to point out obstacles in people's paths and not just tell them that everything is clear sailing if it's not. And part of the reason why I think this is really important is because even if we don't explicitly create those structures, even if we don't explicitly claim what our norms are, communities make them anyway. That's what they do, right? Take, for example, the hashtag. That was something Twitter users just started doing, and Twitter adopted eventually. And sometimes, as in the example with the hashtag, it's a great thing. But there are also other norms that get built up that can prevent newcomers from properly joining a community. So in Jo Freeman's world, the organizations that were supposed to be structuralist, these things that technically had no hierarchy, the problem was that ad hoc elite groups developed, right? People who were friends with each other voted with each other, and that became the social system, which in a lot of ways is exactly how Mean Girls works. And I think that our community has a risk of this happening to us as well, right? Like, in a place where we say anyone can succeed, it's totally meritocratic, blah, 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 there are social dynamics and aesthetics then become the thing that govern whether projects succeed or fail. And that's not necessarily entirely a bad thing, but if we don't name it for the newcomers, it means that we're keeping a lot of people out when, in fact, they should be part of the community. So I guess to sum it up, we need to complicate this idea of disintermediation. It's not just about getting rid of the middlemen between the good creators and the good fans. We all live in this really, really complicated power structure that we're all part of whether we like it or not, and it's not two-dimensional. The only thing that we can do is disaggregate, take apart the system, try to figure out what each part of it is that is contributing to, whether things succeed or not, and put it back together in a way that we feel like reflects our values, and do that as honestly and as openly as we can. Thank you.